Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today I'm revisiting the Sultai Self-Mill archetype, a deck that wants to fill its own graveyard with as many creatures as possible to enable its various synergies and to discount its payoff cards, as we can see here on the right hand side of the deck. Lots of cards that will get a discount for each creature card in our graveyard, such as the Overwhelming Remorse, which can exile a creature or planeswalker, often just for a single black mana. Then there's the Gravestalker, a 5/4, can also be cycled early if we have a lot of them in hand. The Marauder, a 4/2 flyer that will make the opponent discard a card and potentially draws a card as well. And then the Huskburster Swarm not only tracks creatures in the graveyard but also creatures in exile, and then a 6/6 with Menace and Death Touch. So these are most of the win conditions in the deck. Then of course we do need to fill the graveyard in the first place, and then at 1 mana we've got the Gnawing Vermin, which will mill 2 when it enters, and then another 1/1 that can maybe chum block and end up in the graveyard, maybe shrinking an opposing creature down in the process. Then at 2 mana there's the Black Overlord, which can mill 4 cards, potentially returning a non-avatar creature in the process. Sometimes we actively want to keep the creatures in the graveyard, so we get a bigger discount on some of those payoff cards, but the fact that we have the option is very nice, and then we can also maybe cast it later as a decent threat. And then Harvester of Misery we can discard from our hand for just 1 and a black to give a creature -2/-2, or we can cast it for 5 mana, at which point it will affect all creatures on the battlefield, so that also gives the deck a bit of a sweeper effect against go-wide strategies. And then a Cruel Somnophage is part of the reason why we're splashing a bit of blue in this deck, as we can initially mill ourselves for 4 to enable our graveyard synergies, and then later we can cast the creature from the adventure, and then it will grow with a number of creature cards in all graveyards, so it also tracks the opponent's graveyard. And the cool synergy while the Somnophage is on an adventure is that it still discounts the Swarm, since it also tracks our creatures in exile. And then Up the Beanstalk remains a very important piece of the puzzle for this deck, as we get to draw a card when it enters, and whenever we cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, so that will still trigger even if we discount all these finishers. And then Rakshasa's Bargain is another reason to splash a bit of blue in this deck now, as we get to look at the top 4 cards of our library, putting 2 in hand and the rest in our graveyard, so it can still add more creatures to the graveyard if needed, but can also help find our missing interaction or additional copies of Up the Beanstalk if we want those. And it's also a card that has a combined mana value of 6, despite being able to cast it for 3 mana, so it will also trigger Up the Beanstalk if it's already in play. And then we've got 2 copies of Glarb, which is another payoff for adding blue, as we get to look at the top card of our library at any time and play lands and cast spells with mana value 4 or greater from the top of our library. So that can also string together a whole bunch of spells, and it's still a creature, so unlike the Bargain, which doesn't contribute towards our synergies if we randomly mill it, at least if Glarb ends up in the graveyard, we can also get it back with Overlord, and it still helps enable our other synergies. So you do want to be quite careful with how many non-creature spells you play in this archetype, which is why we're limiting it to just 2 Bargains, 4 Beanstalks and 2 Remorses. I've also tried Molt Tender in this archetype before, but it works a lot better if we're just black-green, so we can more consistently cast it on turn 1, because in this 3-color mana base, by the time we can play Molt Tender, it's not going to be all that impactful anymore, and we're often better off just playing a Surveil land that immediately lets us surveil when it enters the battlefield. And then the Surveil lands are also good mana fixing, as well as being important to then fix our colors for the Verge lands, since if we look at Wastewood Verge, it doesn't make black mana to start out, similar to the Gloomlake Verge, so it is important to have enough swamps to enable those. So we've got 8 of the black Surveil lands, 2 Hedge Mazes as kind of a necessary evil, as well as 2 basic swamps, and then we're going to round things out with a few more fast lands that are also producing black mana, Darkslick Shores and a Blooming Marsh. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Can Surveil, turn 2 Overlord, turn 3 maybe Bargain. Take it from there. And Somnophage is a good turn 2 Self-Mill as well. Let's see what we're up against. Blue-green. Yeah, maybe I do Overlords first, also plays around Spell Pierce, which could counter the Adventure. And then eventually the Overlords can also start attacking. Harvester I could grab, or I could leave it in the graveyard. I think I'll still grab it for now. Seed of Hope, opponents milling themselves, also with Up the Beanstalk. So is the blue-green crab deck, perhaps? Okay, so I wanna keep milling myself. Starting with maybe the Somnophage. And the Vermin. Okay, so next turn I could already cast a Gravestalker. Could keep finding more stuff with Bargain. And another Beanstalk. Alright, so opponent's got lots of card draw. Might want to main phase Bargain in case they're running counter spells. And then Remorse should be good. And then Marauder is going to end up being pretty cheap, plus a flying threat might be important. The fact that it has an ETB effect is also good against opposing bounce spells. And then Verge as an untapped land I can draw for next turn. Alright, so we've got a decent setup here. Missing our own Beanstalk to keep stringing together more cards, but since we have Bargain, that's less of a necessity. So we're not over-reliant on the Beanstalk. Sleight of hand. So yeah, the opponent's threats will be Tolarian Terror, and then there's the Crab with Flash for double blue. Opponent keeps a mana for now. So we'll hit for 1. Could still go for Bargain first. Can pay for Spell Pierce, they might have a negate. But if it resolves, I might be able to play Marauder and Gravestalker both for 1 mana. So if I grab both lands, I can cast Gravestalker and Marauder for 1 mana each. Yeah, maybe that's worth a shot just to gain the board advantage. Because with double Beanstalk, we're not guaranteed to win the late game, so we kind of need to punish them for their slower start. Cash grab in response. They're gonna have this Towning big enough to bounce stuff as well. Good with Stormchaser's talent. Okay. At least Harvester can clean up a bunch of small tokens. Although it would also take out our own Marauder if we cast it for 5. So we're probably going to see them flash in the Crab to tap things down. Yep. Still fine to attack with a Vermin. And this turn, I guess it's going to be Surveil. I'll look for a Beanstalk. Glarb's not bad either. Cast Somnophage, Remorse Crab before they can bounce it with their Towning big enough to save it. Possible they have an Unsummon-like effect instead. Okay. Actual Unsummon. Overlord joins the fun, but is likely getting tapped down. But then Glarb gives us another source of card advantage besides Bargain and Beanstalk. So yeah, this deck rarely runs out of stuff to do. Move to attackers. Could be a double Crab turn as well. And double crab it is. Yeah, that's making it difficult to get any attacks in. Now I probably turtle up with the vermin. Hope Glarb finds some goodies on top. And this we can still impend. Swarm I should be able to cast for 1 mana. Marauder might be better if they end up bouncing it later. And again, a flying threat. Although I see a Remorse on top, so I can start there. Hope they don't have more unsummons. They don't. Alright, so that's brought to you by Glarb. And a town ain't big enough discarded, so they must have multiples in hand already. All we can do is present as many threats as possible, keep the opponent busy, tapping things down and bouncing stuff. And yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen once the dust settles. There's 2 crabs left, but plenty of bounce spells. Harvester, again, potentially an answer to multiple tokens. But as long as we can keep attacking with our flyers, we can put those to use. Triple Tolarian Terrors, their opponent's done keeping up mana, just gonna tap out for as many threats as possible, so they don't fall behind. At least some of our creatures keep growing, like the Somnophage, so they might be able to outmuscle the Tolarian Terror. Crab attacks. Can jump, take out an otter, forcing them to trigger prowess to save it. Game could also come down to decking. Opponent's got 21 cards remaining, so Somnophage milling the opponent could be a thing. But yeah, the problem is staying back to block when they have all those crabs is probably not going to work out too well for me. So ideally we're the ones applying pressure, forcing them to block and trade off. Town ain't big enough, bouncing crab and Glarb. Glarb doesn't really need to be able to tap to provide value. Can still play it and immediately play creatures off the top. Step 1 might be to attack, and then trigger my Overlord as well, which will grow Somnophage some more. Go for a Marauder, or we could grab Somnophage if it's gonna come down to decking, because we're also running out of cards. They know about the Harvester. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with any and all trades. Damage happens. So we're not in danger of dying next turn. I don't think there's a way for them to pump their creatures that they already have. Yeah, what's my plan? Start with Glarb. Could also impend another Overlord to get something back. Like another Somnophage to mill 4/4 again. So we can punish them for having Beanstalk, although they can bounce their own Beanstalk with town ain't big enough, so it's no longer a concern. So yeah, tricky spot. I think I'll start with Glarb, see what's on the top of the deck. A Swarm. At least I don't have my own Beanstalk, drawing cards each time. So now it might be Somnophage, Milieu, cast it. So 14 cards remain, and our opponent scoops it up. Awesome! On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have double Overlord, which we can cast early. in the hopes of enabling Gravestalker and Swarm. We'll still need a swamp, so Verge makes black mana, but we have Blooming Marsh to help out. Opponent on Fabled Passage for a Forest, and now Mortuary is a good draw. Definitely want to keep the Beanstalk when we have double Overlord in hand. A red-green. Okay. Start with Beanstalk. Next turn we can Overlord plus maybe Surveil. And a World Wagon, so our opponent's ramping. Yeah, ramp decks might be able to go over the top of what we're doing. Bargain now also quite tempting. I think if I go back-to-back Overlord, I might already be able to cast one of my creatures next turn. So then I still favor the Overlord. Alright, that's 4 creatures, that's great. Could take the Vermin, could leave it in the graveyard, and just play another Surveil land, which I also don't hate. Yeah, because we have a couple tapped lands in hand. And then Swamp I don't need. Okay, so next turn I'm quite likely to imp and Overlord and then cast Gravestalker, or if we get very lucky, a Swarm as well. Trailblazer is next. Can crew the Wagon. And the Scrap Gorger, that's Graveyard Hate. So we need to make the most out of it while we can. Or find a removal spell. Okay, step 1, still gonna be Overlord, Impended. Draw another Beanstalk. And that's a lot of Marauders, can definitely grab one of those if we want. Does that make sense? Yeah, Harvester can't quite deal with Scrap Gorger, would just remove Trailblazer. But I think we want to cast some threats here. So I can cast Marauder and Gravestalker. And then the Swarm still keeps its discount even if my creatures get exiled. Alright, found the Remorse. So could use it on the Scrap Gorger, but it might be better served elsewhere. Opponent discarding Yarus. Yeah, I feel like there's going to be bigger creatures we want to exile. And then discard to hand size. Probably done surveilling for now. I see Voltborn Tyrants. Well, that's the perfect target for Remorse. Happy to trade for the World Wagon if that attacks. But yeah, we're probably winning the card advantage battle with double Beanstalk. Probably want to keep the Flyers. Okay, so I can cast a 1-mana Swarm, maybe after we play another Beanstalk. Hope to draw more 1-mana creatures we can cast. Definitely got to Remorse the Tyrant. And I guess it's just going to be a Vermin here. Alright, so it could have been better. Could also play a Surveil land. But if they remove the Swarm, I might want Vermin as a blocker. Do I mill the opponent? Nah, I think I still mill myself. Can grow Somnophage if we were to draw one. And then, let's see, we've got 2 Surveil lands, so I can maybe keep those. So I've got a mix of tapped lands and untapped lands. Bargain next turn gets to see a lot of cards too, and we may need another Remorse for a second Tyrant. Yeah, we should be able to overpower them in the sense that we get to cast some 6/6 creatures for 1 mana, whereas the opponent needs to pay 7 for theirs. So our goal is to just quickly overwhelm them by casting too many threats for them to deal with. But we need to draw those creatures for that to work. Alright, another Beanstalk. Is there any risk of decking? I can also cast the Overlord, get something back. If we want to find another Remorse, then Bargain, I guess, digs the deepest. And then I can still likely cast some creatures afterwards. Yeah, third Beanstalk might be overkill. No Remorse, but we found a Swarm, and Somnophage is pretty large, although Gravestalker I can cast for 1 mana. Alright, there we go. There's a Remorse. That's what we wanted. They can still crew the World Wagon in response, but I don't think we care, since I'm happy to trade Swarm for 2 of their creatures. So I don't want to be milling myself too much anymore, since we're going to run out of cards at this rate. Alright, Somnophage is decent. And then discard 6, might have been easier to just keep 7. So a few tapped lands, Beanstalk. Don't need Bargain anymore. And another land here. Okay. So at the very least, Overlord could get back a creature from graveyard, but not without adding more cards to the graveyard. So that may not get cast. But Gravestalker, Somnophage, and Glarb could be alright. There's Yarus, giving other creatures haste. Don't know if they're manifesting to synergize with it. Another Trailblazer. So yeah, opponent's also drawing a lot of cards. And the Twin Flame Tyrant. Yeah, that's potentially a lot of damage. We are at 14, but we should still be safe. If they had multiple Twin Flames, we could have died on the spot. It also blocks Marauder pretty well. Opponent's gonna play defense. So step 1, probably Gravestalker, draw 2. Find another Marauder. Make you discard. And Lenor Elves draws a card, so 8 cards remain. So at this point, probably just going for Somnophage and that's it. Can attack with the Husk Bursters and the Gravestalker. And some trades will occur. Can also mill the opponent with Vermin and Somnophage. Opponent's at 1. Cast Somnophage. And maybe Glarb's better than Vermin at this rate. Okay. Another Overlord joins the fun. Discard maybe Overlord to hand size since we're not casting it. That also grows Somnophage. So opponent's got one card left in hand. Can it somehow win them the game? It cannot. Alright, sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a solid hand. Turn 1. Could play Vermin. I think I'm fine to just play a Mortuary. And then another Vermin I'll keep. Against blue-black, I probably want to make sure we resolve up the Beanstalk. And then next turn I can play a couple Vermin. Make that triple Vermin. Opponent also sultai colors. So yeah, by milling 6, we're pretty likely to set up Marauder on the following turn. I say as I mill 2 lanes. That's one creature at least. And 2 more. Alright, so can cast a 4-mana Marauder. Opponent with a Cornucopia. So probably a more controlling build. Opponent's got a discard. And we get to draw a Gravestalker. Alright, so we're starting to deal a bit of damage. Another Cornucopia. Possible our opponent's going big with potential clone effects, like Doppelgang. Now triple Cornucopia. So step 1 might be to surveil, in case I mill another creature. Well, Marauder I could mill, discounting the Gravestalker, although it's also a good card to just draw. So tempted to just keep it on top. Of course, best case scenario, we put Marauder in the graveyard and there's more of them on top. But that's not a guarantee. Opponent with their own Beanstalk. Still 5 mana available. And Awaken can destroy our Beanstalk. I imagine that's what they go for. No, opponent's still going for the Gravestalker. Also a card we could be running, since it does fill the graveyard. Although maybe not quite as immediately as our bargain. So I can attack. Maybe another creature gets removed to discount Marauder some more. If not, can maybe surveil first. I'll keep the Beanstalk. Draw into it, and then we can still cast it. Opponent's down to 1 card in hand. They had an Exhale, so maybe a Dragon deck. Yeah, still play a Beanstalk here in case there's a board wipe. All the upside of Gravestalker is that we might be threatening lethal. Still seems unlikely when they have triple Cornucopia. There's also a chance this is some sort of Teval deck. Since they are filling the graveyard, they're gaining life to offset Teval's drawback. So I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, so start by attacking. Can remorse the cottage if they animate it. Opponent falls to 3. And maybe start with another Vermin. So we can play 1 mana Gravestalker. And draw 2. Finding another Beanstalk and Somnophage. Well, I don't think we're getting milled out. And then Swarm I can maybe cast if I mill one more creature. And draw 3. And then Somnophage is pretty big too. And then Bargain also draws 3 in addition to looking at the top 4. So their opponent needs some sort of board wipe or a way to just win the game on the spot. But from this board state, that seems unlikely. Alright, Maelstrom Pulse, I guess could have answered multiple Vermins or Marauders. Go for the throw, discard it. Pulse also a decent answer to triple Beanstalk, but we've already gotten our value from those. And goes for a Restless Reef. So their opponent needs to stabilize here. They are looking at the graveyard for an Analyze, so yeah, this could be Teval incoming. Although their opponent did gain life off Cornucopia, so they're probably not going to cast a multicolored spell. I see the Regent to wipe the board. Can they do it for 6? They can. Alright, so they get to survive here. But now our graveyard is stocked very nicely. So Somnophage is huge. Our opponent got rid of most of their spot removal spells. So let's see, if I bargain, I get to see a lot of cards. Could be a double-edged sword, but kind of want to still go for it. And that's a lot of land. And then I'll take the creatures. Probably Somnophage and Overlord over Glarb. We did see Maelstrom Pulse earlier, so that's maybe a reason not to play double Somnophage right now. But I guess those are my only threats I can cast. And we can keep the Overlord on top. So any one of our Somnophages is lethal. Our opponent's drawing 1 card. So yeah, unless it's a Maelstrom Pulse, I like my chances. Can clear a path with Overwhelming Remorse. They kept on top. So is it a Pulse? It's a bargain. So they get to gain 9 life. Still not enough to survive, but if they maybe now find a removal spell, I guess they would still die. So yeah, interesting to see a deck with a similar foundation, the Beanstalk plus Bargain, but then taking it in a more controlling direction with the dragons as well. And yeah, that'll do it. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Turn 1 Vermin, turn 2 can mill with Somnophage, and then we should already have a pretty full graveyard. As always, hoping to mill a couple creatures, a land and bargain instead. Turn 1 Llanowar Elves. Alright, Beanstalk is nice. I think I still mill with Somnophage first. This time mills 2 creatures. May as well attack to get a damage in. Now a Stormchaser's Talent. Not often paired with the Llanowar Elves. Could mill 4 with Somnophage, best case scenario mill 4 creatures, cast a 1-mana Marauder. Unlikely to happen, admittedly. Casting Somnophage is just a 2/2, so it's not very large yet. So yeah, I guess we'll still mill over playing Beanstalk. Milled 2 creatures this time. And then I can still Remorse for 1 mana. Don't think I need to exile the Elves. We'll wait and see what's next. Playing Beanstalk first might also be worth it. Another Elves. Vermin happy to block. Opponent passes. Start here. Okay, and then we'll pass with Remorse available. Might be a town big enough to bounce. Talent and Vermin. Sure. Might end up remorsing the Otter token. So is their entire game plan just looping talent with town big enough? Maybe. So then we just want to overwhelm their mana by presenting a lot of cheap threats. Alright. Start with Overlord, and then ideally mill at least 2 creatures. We did. So I could just decline and then cast a 1-mana Marauder. Yeah, that seems fine. Draw another Remorse. So yeah, we're not running out of action anytime soon. Next turn could be Marauder, play double Somnophage. So their plan of bouncing over and over is unlikely to work. So for now, a sleight of hand. And they're gonna bounce. Step 1 Marauder. It's gonna be triple Marauder this turn, so we can empty out their entire hand. That's another way to stop their combo. Yeah, we're not gonna need all these Beanstalks. Discarding the Songcrafter Mage, that explains a lot. So that's what green is mostly for. Alright, and that'll do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. Do have 2 tapped lands, but at least Vermin's and other cheap threats we can deploy to fill the graveyard. Keep the untapped land, facing blue-white. Fountain Port points towards control. Yeah, I'll go Vermin plus tapped land. Mill before we surveil in case I want to keep like a Beanstalk on top. Glarb isn't bad either. Yeah, if we're up against control, that could be useful. Even though normally we just want to put as many creatures in graveyard as possible early on. So it is a tokens deck. Could also bargain, or we could Somnophage plus another Vermin. Glarb's going to be better once we have a little bit more mana, so we can immediately cast creatures off the top. Because it would be pretty bad if I just cast it and they remove it without it providing any value. Mill the Beanstalk, sadly. So currently have 4 creatures in graveyard. Now I could consider playing Glarb in the hopes that there's a land on top. Could also main phase the bargain to hit my land drop. That's weaker in the face of a counterspell, which our opponent could be keeping up. So let's just play Glarb. much rather play bargain on a turn where we're happy to pass a turn with mana untapped. Opponent counters while exiling in the process. So that still discounts the swarm at least. Alright, we hit our land drops, so that's better. So now I can pass with bargain up, cast it in the opponent's turn. So we're maybe wasting their mana. And I'll definitely keep the beanstalk on top. Opponent's not sure what to do now that we pass a turn. They're just going to draw and discard. Could ensure that we resolve the bargain, but if they counter, then maybe we resolve the beanstalk instead. And both are useful. They could still be on temporary lockdown, even though it's a bit of a nombo with tokens. And yeah, we'll have to watch out for Sunfall. So we don't want to overcommit. They found their lands, and Sirens next. So it may not be a fully dedicated control deck. They don't have double blue up for another 3 steps ahead, but they could have another No More Lies. Alright, so I'll keep a Beanstalk and Overlord. Add 1 more creature to the graveyard. And then now I can play Beanstalk while being able to pay for No More Lies. Usually want to keep as much black mana available as possible. That resolves. They could have a Get Lost to destroy it. Alright, fair enough. Still draw a card. And then now could attack. And then I like Marauder here. And then I'm not sure yet if I want to play the Swarm as well. Could also explore. Right, drew Remorse. Yeah, you know what, I'll cast the Swarm if they want a Sunfall, that's okay. So now we've got a better spot for Glarb to immediately cast things off the top of the deck. Opponent copies the map to draw, so no Sunfall this turn. And they're gonna explore. Another talent might be too slow. But they're gonna keep it, so they must have some interaction left. Maybe another Get Lost for the Swarm. A Reliquary. Okay. Another Remorse. Step 1 Glarb. It's a little awkward, I guess, in the face of a No More Lies, since I don't want to play the land yet, in case I can play one off the top. Let's see what happens. Should have tapped the Hedge Maze too. Alright, No More Lies, that's fine. So that's exiled. Can still get back the other copy with the Overlord. And then for now we'll just Remorse the Siren, attack for 6, play Somnophage. And if they want to tap out for another talent, they won't be able to wipe the board. And given that they're playing Reliquary, they're probably not playing Temporary Lockdown. So they're just making a token with Fountain Port. Now Siren has second blocker. But they're still dead to Remorse, removing 1 creature here. GG's. Could have also used Overlord to get back the Harvester and then deal with the opponent's creatures that way. So yeah, we got to see this latest iteration of Sultai Selfmill in action, and yeah, the deck has undergone a lot of changes over the years. I still remember the original builds with Urborg Lurgoyf, which is still in standard, but no longer makes the cut nowadays, as it doesn't have the best synergy with Up the Beanstalk. And yeah, that's still the key card in this archetype, allowing you to string together a whole bunch of cheap creatures that can impact the board right away. The bargain seemed like a reasonable addition, but of course every non-creature spell in this deck needs to to seriously pull its weight, since whenever you mill a non-creature card in the graveyard, it feels awful. So you probably won't want to play the full playset of Rakshasa's Bargain, but 2 copies could be a fine addition, giving you some more instant speed play and another way to trigger your Beanstalks as well. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.